Hey, welcome everybody to the BA Zones pre-show. We're going to get going here in just 2 minutes. Tonight, we're going to be talking about flows, the who, what, the when, the where, and the why. So it's if you know anybody who might be interested in that topic, please tap them on the shoulder, let them know what's going on. Uh, just still recovering from the Super Bowl. If anybody watches the Super Bowl, I kind of watch football. I kind of like football, and the Super Bowl was really good, but it was kind of boring because it was so good. They were so well matched to one another that there was not a big high scoring game. So there was more eating and drinking than normal because we were just waiting for something to happen, and it finally did. So congratulations to that team that won. But I'm happy for them. So what else is new? What is going on in your life? We've had some string of, I'm going to play Marianne the weather girl now. We've had some string of warm weather. I mean, literally, we went from 0 to 60 degrees within a matter of days. So we got the highs and lows going on of the season, but hopefully it's going to continue to warm up now. And we actually have a health alert going because there's actually so much salt was put on the roads that it didn't get a chance to wash off or run off, and it's creating this chemical cloud everywhere. It's everybody coughing and choking, and although it's 60 degrees, you really don't want to go out because it's there's a haze out there, a haze of chemical salt. But anyway, okay, let's get going. It is 8 o'clock. I want to welcome everybody who's recently, signed up for our mailing list, by the way, and all those folks out on YouTube as well. And tonight, welcome to the BA Zone. This is our live show. It is 8 o'clock. Time to get going. I was just saying football season's over, but we're just getting warmed up. So break out the snacks and your favorite beverage because it's game time. I'm Marianne Morrison, and Kathleen Sinnott is playing relief kicker. We're going to go through a lot of football things here, only in the beginning, really. She's our relief kicker behind the scenes, and together we are the BA Zone, here to serve the business analyst community in our own crazy way. Tonight we are going to talk about flow charts or flow diagrams and how they can help you unravel complex issues, improve communication, and uncover things long forgotten or completely unexpected. How, you ask? Well, by mapping out the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why of processes, workflows, tasks, or data, just to name a few, that give you this complete view that you need in order to analyze, simplify, and optimize. So, and don't forget, if you have any comments or questions during the show, please feel free to join in. Or if you're watching on a replay later, drop us an email. And if you know anyone who might be interested in this topic, or you're just trying to get them out of the house, please pass us along. But don't pass up on this chance to loosen your limbs with Kathleen's intro. So let's go, Kathleen. Hey, everybody. Okay, what are flows or diagrams or flow charts? In the direct sense, flows are visual models, a mapping of the path or flow of the steps in or across processes, workflows, tasks, data. In fact, just about anything that has more than one step can be flowed out. Flows define the most common path taken, as well as all the possible alternate paths, including all the activities that occur along each path and the positive and negative outcomes of those activities. But more importantly, flows help everyone understand the full breadth of a business from end to end, including, the manual to the automated, the paper to the electronic, and everything in between. Flows enable people to open a line of communication with one another. They're sort of all looking at the same thing. Everyone gets everyone on the same page by identifying and organizing the steps or the tasks in a particular process or data. It identifies issues, bottlenecks, and redundancies. It helps you standardize approaches going forward, helps you optimize productivity through those efficiencies, and it helps you plan for the future. So as a BA, you will use flows over and over again. So why not leverage their flexibility, right? So, and speaking of leverage, if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the BA Zone to get information before anyone else does. And again, we only ask for minimal information. We don't share it with anyone. And if you have signed up, welcome to the community. So let's talk about what's in a flow. In a flow, there's going to be shapes. And when we talk about shapes, there's a ton of shapes that you can use to represent different things in your flow diagrams. Typically, flows are illustrated or described using these different types of shapes that then contain text. They're all connected to one another with a series of arrows or connecting lines that show the sequence or the order of the events or the steps that you're mapping out. And they don't need to be overly complicated. For example, the most commonly used shapes, and these are fine in and of themselves if you're just starting out and just focusing on these particular shapes. And you see them in all types of flow diagrams. In order to start a process, or if you're ending a process, they have sort of that elongated circle. And that's usually the start or the end of a workflow process, right? You'll have all your boxes, your little rectangles, and those indicate the steps that you take along the process, and they have text in them too. And then you have the diamonds, and the diamonds indicate like a conditional or a decision point. Those are your sort of, sometimes they're questions with a yes, no answer, and the paths that the yes and the no takes. When you, it's so funny when we're talking about these diamonds, when you first start out creating these workflows, you really try like crazy to get all of the yes arrows going in one direction and all of the no arrows going in another direction, to make it look really neat and slick. And there's always that one yes or no that doesn't fit in the pattern, and it just drives you crazy. But, diamonds are not only a girl's best friend. When you actually dig around those diamonds, which are the conditional or the questions, you dig a little deeper with questions like who, when, where, and why, they often reveal business rules. So when you're actually flowing out a process with users, and you come to a decision point, always ask, is there maybe a time limit? Does this have to be done in a specific time frame? Well, if it does, that's a business rule that has to be documented. So there's a lot of business rules that you can capture in those diamonds. So again, they are a girl's best friend, but for different reasons when we're talking about flow charts. And a guy's best friend too. Guys can't have enough diamonds, right? And in addition to the elongated circles, the rectangles, and the diamonds, you also can use a couple of output symbols or input symbols, a little file, a little file icon, a form, a letter, an email, etc. And then the only other thing you really need are the connectors, the on-page connectors and the off-page connectors. Now, sometimes when you're listing a ton of tasks across the flow chart, you kind of run out of room, or you have to reference another little section that's in a different part of the same page that you're on. You could do that with one of the little circles and put a little A in it and then map it to another little A that says, okay, go from here, point A to point A over here. Those are on-page connectors. And you also have off-page connectors to say, okay, this is the end of this flow, continue on the next page. If you only use those symbols, you're fine. Most people only use those symbols. They don't get into any additional ones. There are so many shapes and templates of shapes that are out there. But you can also use graphics and pictures that represent, customers or forms, files, or systems, actual photographs of people doing something. You can do that as well. But I just want to caution you when we're talking about using a variety of different shapes. Sometimes sometimes you get the feeling like, "Ooh, I'm going to use every shape in the book." So, and that can become a little confusing for a reader to follow. And the purpose of this is a visual representation. You want to cut down on as much of that visual noise as possible. So try to keep them as simple and straightforward as possible to get your meaning across. In addition to all shapes that you're using in flows, you can also use color. But just be aware, as Kathleen always reminds me, she sort of is harping on it really, but we don't say that. You're fine, Kathleen. It's really not harping. But be careful when you're using color, because users typically print out documentation, and they often print it in black and white. So there goes your color. The color representation kind of gets lost in that scenario. So sort of be careful how you use that. So once you get the symbols down and what symbols you're going to be using, and you're going to take the high-level tasks and document them out. And then each high-level task is going to have a series of steps and decisions within it. And you're really just sort of flowing out. This is the process from beginning to end. If it's a process, if it's data flow, you're capturing data moving through a system, etc. But there's different ways to then take those symbols and lay them out in a template. Again, just as many different ways to lay them out as there are symbols. Well, maybe not quite as many. But one of the hardest things when you first start doing flows is getting that layout working well, right? And getting it correct. Because just when you think you've got everything locked in, someone adds a step that now requires you to move all those boxes all over the place again, and all those arrows and all those connectors. Pretty similar to creating comps. Somebody changes something and you have to change 15 comps down the road. So it's the same type of thing. But there are certain typical patterns that you can use. And again, you're not tied into any particular layout, whatever gets your point across. But a few of them are, you have the vertical view where everything is sort of linear from top to bottom. And a lot of that time, I'll use that as a high-level overview of main processes or tasks that may contain many sub-processes or tasks that you're going to lay out differently. But when you're summarizing sort of high-level things, I like to use that top to bottom flow of information. And that would be your vertical view. Most of the times you're going to see workflows or process flows or task flows in more of a horizontal view, moving the steps from left to right. If you're in this country, from left to right. I think maybe in Asia it might be right to left. But anyway, it would be left to right here. And your steps are next to each other, left to right, and they're connected with arrows. And when you get to the end of the line, it's similar to, continuing when you're typing on the next line. You would just connect with a line to the next row of tasks. And you just keep following that pattern like a snake all the way through the horizontal. Sometimes when we're talking about showing cross-functional type of tasks, where maybe you're moving from marketing tasks to sales to finance or billing or what it might be, or if you're moving in a hospital system from admission to having testing done to treatment to discharge, you may want to represent those type of flows in what we call cross-functional views or swim lanes. And swim lanes really, they can be vertical or they can be horizontal. And they will have each particular bar or lane, similar to a swimming pool when you see the floats separating out an Olympic swimming pool. You have these lanes, and each lane might represent a particular role or a particular department. And in that way, you can follow the flow of a process from department to department. So if admissions in a hospital is taking admission information, then that admission information may go to the floor nurse or the intake nurse or whatever, and they may do a piece, and then it goes somewhere else. So you can follow who does what along the way. And those are cross-functional layouts or swim lane layout. Sometimes you'll see a layout where it might look like a spoke or a wagon wheel, where you have a central hub with many points going off of it. We use that a lot when we're talking about search engines, or when you're talking about alerts or messaging. A lot of times they are represented with a bunch of different alerts that are out here, and then they come into a central messaging system. And hardware and things like that can be flowed out and laid out that way as well too. Sometimes you might want to use a combo view. Sometimes you may want to use this visual representation, but maybe you need additional documentation along with it. And on the same page, you can sort of bisect the page and have your little flow diagram over here horizontally with key points numbered. And then over on the right-hand side, you can have detailed text information with the same numbered fields. So you can mix it up that way. Again, no limit to the layout, but first work on mastering the most commonly used symbols and layouts before you start branching out. And whatever you do, just remember to add a symbol key or a visual key so that everyone is interpreting the symbols correctly in the same way. And whatever documentation you use, always add a title to it, a version, an author, the date, and any kind of privacy or confidential or company information that might be required. And that'll get you pretty far. Also, that key can be called the symbol legend, if you may. So just take a little quick-see look here and make sure everybody's okay. Everybody looks okay. Just if, speaking of keys, if you need a key to find us, Kathleen will put up that one slide to tell you where you can find us and where you can locate us. We're everywhere. We're on Twitter, the BA Zone, Instagram, Instagram.com, the BA Zone, Periscope, Periscope.tv, the BA Zone, Facebook.com, the BA Zone, YouTube.com, the BA Zone. And you can always as well get us on our website at thebazone.com. And again, if you have any topics or areas that you'd like us to cover, please drop us a line and we'll see if we can work your suggestions or idea into one of our upcoming shows. And we do get many of our topics from our viewers. So thank you for tuning into us, and we love to help. Okay, so let's see, we're working at okay, we are good. Okay, so let's talk about a few of the flows or different types of flows that are out there. Just for this last segment, we're just going to look at 3 of the most commonly used ones and sometimes the most misunderstood. So let's take a look at workflows. Workflows can capture functional, technical, or business processes, but in each case, they will always document all the actors, the systems, the tasks, the steps, and activities involved in completing a goal or a process, including those that are done on and offline. So a lot of times people forget about some of the offline things that are being done, especially if you're more application focused. So you definitely want to include some of that offline information in the workflow diagram. And again, that workflow diagram is going to present a visual representation of how these elements connect and or interact. And it identifies what conditions allow it to move forward to the next step. What are the sequence of events? And a workflow diagram is commonly used everywhere for documentation and implementation purposes. It provides a really good overview for a business process. And most of the times we use it as foundations for the rest of the requirements document, whether it be, the use cases, task flows, process flows, and test cases as well. So that is I think that would be, if we had to say, the most commonly used one. Task flows are used to take a more detailed look at what the person will actually do as they use an application in completing some of the tasks that are associated with a workflow. This could also be manual tasks as well. Doesn't have to be an application, but it's the order that the steps need to be performed, which steps are dependent on the results of a previous step, which ones can run concurrent, and which steps are optional or only relevant if you have a particular criteria or a particular situation. So task flows are also often used to test sort of conceptual models that we throw out there to make sure that we're developing a particular feature the way a user needs to use it, rather than building it and then making a whole lot of changes later. It's a little bit cheaper that way. So that's why we would use a lot of the task flows. And the third one that we talk about is process flows. Now, process flows combine the information from the workflow and the task flows, and they tie them sort of to all of the screens in an application and the messages and the feedback. So they include the paths that different users may follow to perform different tasks, depending on their entry point or where they come in or what their roles or responsibilities are. And they're really helpful when you need to walk through a process in order to evaluate what a user would experience when we're talking about building an application. And it also can help to test the existing functionality and the logic that's in place, and enable you to evaluate that logic and the impact of adding new functionality or plans or redesigns. And again, you will use different types of flows depending on your needs, on your industry, and on the particular process or task or data, whatever you might be working on. And one thing is for sure, though, these are all going to be living documents. These are not sort of your one and dones. You're going to refer to these over and over. You're going to want to keep a master. You're going to want to keep them updated because you're going to be adding functionality, changing functionality. You might be merging with another company. So the first thing we always want to do is document, workflows and processes end to end, so that you have that ongoing current as is view that you can then adapt and change when you find bottlenecks or redundancies. Just because you think all of your redundancies have been taken care of, the next thing you know, you may merge with another company and you have a whole new set of redundancies. So get comfortable and proficient with using workflows because it is one of the best tools and skill sets that you can have in your BA toolbox. And that's tonight's show. We want to thank you for joining us. And remember, the next time you are facilitating an elicitation session, use a flow diagram, right? Whether it's on a traditional whiteboard, a virtual whiteboard, or even those little colored stickies that fall off the wall most of the time. So number them so that you know where they belong. You can always erase a number and reposition them. But any way you use it. You will be amazed at how much easier it is to connect with people and how the information will just flow. So that's tonight's show. Let me just check back and make sure Kathleen hasn't done anything. We're all good. We're all good on this end. Terrific. Okay. I want to thank everybody for stopping by. We know your time is precious, and see you next Tuesday on the BA Zone Live. Good night, everybody.